looking at here is the Croft House, built by Colonel Michael C. Dunn. It was completed about 1810. Now, it was built with slave labor. We will touch on that in just a moment. It was built in the Federal style. Now, Michael C. Dunn's son-in-law, Lee Shute, purchased the farm for $10,000 in 1846. Several years later, Lee sold the 346-acre property to William Dixon Shute. That would be his son, for the whopping sum of $5 as a loving gift for William, his son, and his new bride, Lavinia. Now, William and Lavinia had 4 surviving adult daughters: Layla, Maggie, Veenie, and Kate. Kate would be the one to bring the Croft name to the house. Kate married her husband, William Croft, on the property in 1888. They had 2 daughters, Margaret and Elise, born in 1889 and 1894, respectively. Now, in 1902, William Croft decided he was going to move the family to Cuba for business. But Margaret and Elise, they kept returning to Grassmere every summer to stay with their grandparents and aunts. Now, in 1931, Margaret and Elise decided they were going to return to Grassmere for good. In 1964, the Croft sisters entered into an agreement with the Children's Museum of Nashville, which is now the Adventure Science Center. The agreement stated that the museum would pretty much take care of property taxes and help them keep the property up and running until their eventual deaths. The stipulation being that their property would be maintained as a nature study center, preserved to educate Nashvillians and likewise Tennesseans on animals and the environment. The main garden area here at the house includes period-correct flowers and plants. Then there's heirloom vegetables, medicinal plants, and herbs, and then there's a revived orchard. There's also a culinary herb garden, for the home's kitchen there. There's heirloom roses in the back of the main garden with numerous daffodils, irises, azaleas, and they kind of dot the farm here and there. There's also a nice children's area. It's kind of like a little... muscadine grapes. This is the second trip we've taken, and I finally got around getting to the children's garden. Little frog guy there. Neat little area. A lot of these flowers are, if I'm not mistaken, they bloom all the sort of stuff that butterflies love. And if you look back there, there is part of the rose garden in full display. Now, this is an actual working farm, or at least it was at one point, so there were several cash crops such as sweet potatoes, tobacco, cotton, the whole nine. But there are still some gardens going on back here, as some of the videos will show. Most of the plants are purely ornamental, such as the irises, things like that, while others are actually herbs for cooking and used in medicinal purposes. barn owl? Hi, friend.
There's two of them.
Oh, I didn't see the big one.
That's the first one I saw on that side.
Goats and sheep and whatnot. As to be expected with the time period that we're dealing with here, the Croft House and all the subsequent buildings on the property were built with the labor of enslaved individuals. Current estimates are sitting somewhere between 30 to 35 individuals actually being enslaved by the families that occupied the residence. In addition to building the property, the families also worked the crops and raised the livestock. Alright, so if you actually pay a visit to the Nashville Zoo at Grassmere, that's only been on the ground since 1997. That's when they moved from Jolton. Directly right of the admission gate, there was once an enslaved cemetery. Now, they knew about that cemetery being there in 1989. They only estimated there to be about 5 individuals there. Now, in 2014, I believe, is when they decided they were going to expand the actual admission area to the admission village that they have there now. They petitioned to go ahead and actually have that burial site exhumed. So the state archaeologists came in, and they weren't really sure what they were going to find. They didn't know if they would find tenant farmers or exactly what was going on. But what they found were the remains of 20 individuals who lived and worked the property from about 1830 to about the 1860s. Now, what they were able to actually figure out was that they were actually buried in clothing in wooden coffins rather than just shrouds and then placed directly into the dirt, which was more common for the time. And there was an article written in the USA Today in September of 2014 that said 6 individuals had arthritis, 1 man walked with a limp, a woman endured a fractured vertebrae in her lower spine. It also goes on to tell us that there was a 19-year-old man that was extremely tall, about 6'2", 6'3", that had a terrible case of gout. There was one woman that was 22 weeks pregnant at the time of her death. So, you know, with all these details, they basically go ahead and christen this group of people as the Unknown 20. September 22nd of 1862 is when the executive order was issued by Abraham Lincoln that we know as the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, even after this point in time, after emancipation, African Americans continued to be fundamental to the operation and ongoing running of the Grassmere property, particularly the Morton family. Now, we'll see Frank and his son Albert here in a couple of pictures in a little bit, but basically Frank moved to Grassmere in 1919, and Elise Croft is actually very vocal about him teaching her everything that she knows. Now, the cabin that you will see in some of these videos is an old slave quarters that was moved to its current place. That way Frank and his family could live there. Now, Frank, his wife, they had 9 children, and they actually all lived in these old slave quarters that are now on the grounds, and this is where Frank and his family lived. Frank worked and lived at Grassmere. He raised his 9 children, one of which is Albert, who continued to work the farm after his father's passing in 1962. It goes without saying that without the Morton family, none of the property at Grassmere would still be around. Like, it just wouldn't exist. Now, as weird as it sounds, these stories are still coming to light. There is still information that we don't know that is still becoming more and more evident every day. And as things become more evident, we will be able to actually properly document it, and the stories will be told. I appreciate everybody.
All right, guys, as I was saying, as more information comes to light, we're going to be able to actually properly pay tribute and remember these people and everything that they did, and not just think of it as, oh, that's just a nasty point in time. So, I definitely want to keep checking this place out. I fell in love with the Croft House. I went back twice. I mean, I found out information and I wanted to go see more. So, it's one of those things, you do a little research and suddenly it becomes personal at that point. I want to I want to encourage everybody to do their own research. I want form your own opinions. Go out and do a little exploring. You might find a few things that you didn't know about.